Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, I take this opportunity today to speak about taxes that continue to put pressure on the cost of living for people, families and businesses across New South Wales and in my electorate. My staff and I had a visit from a constituent named Enzo. Enzo is an Italian immigrant that left his home to come to Australia many decades ago in search for a better life. Upon his arrival to Australia, he found work basically straight away. He worked for many years in labour-intensive jobs and worked 2 jobs for a big portion of that to make ends meet and save some money. He purchased his home that he still lives in the Drummoyne electorate. During his working life, he decided to buy a second property in the hopes that this would help him in his retirement. Enzo came to my office because upon receiving his land tax bill, he can barely meet the payment, let alone sustain himself as a self-funded retiree. This government has frozen the land tax threshold and at the same time raised land tax rates. And what I'm seeing in my community is that it is hurting self-funded retirees. In my electorate, my constituents are house proud and many seniors were migrants to Australia. They are generally people from European backgrounds, from countries like Italy and Greece. They are hard workers who worked in any job they could find to get ahead. They never complain because they are so grateful to Australia for all of the opportunity it brings. They came here without being able to speak the language and saved every penny they could so that their children and grandchildren could have the best possible life. They worked hard and they made the decision to be self-funded retirees. Often they weren't educated, so they couldn't comprehend investments on the stock market, so they bought property. Because they were so grateful to be in Australia, they didn't want to ask the government for a pension. That's the way they see it. Now, many people, just like Enzo, are stuck because they cannot afford to pay their land tax bill. The rent they collect is not enough to live after all their expenses. I had another constituent come and visit us in the office with tears in their eyes. They'd purchased one home about 20 years ago across the road from where they lived. They rent the house to a single mother with 3 kids. The rent they collect is not enough to cover the land tax bill, so they have been forced to raise the rent. This person wasn't the stereotypical greedy landlord. This was someone that was feeling so guilty for raising the rent because he didn't want another family to struggle financially, but he was left with no other choice. For many in my community and across New South Wales, the land tax indexation freeze presents challenges, and I'm calling on the government to support self-funded retirees in this situation. I now turn to stamp duty. I have door-knocked many homes in my electorate, and there are so many potential downsizers who tell me that they would sell their home immediately if there were decent, spacious apartments available on the market and if they weren't going to incur a massive stamp duty bill. We are in the middle of a housing crisis, and every single possible option should be on the table to get families and young people into suitable homes. We have a cohort of empty nesters who are living in homes that are too big for them because it's too expensive for them to move elsewhere. Stamp duty is a massive deterrent for downsizers, and I want to see all of us in this place work together to give reasonable stamp duty concessions so that empty nesters have an incentive to downsize and so that young families can move into those homes. I'm a kid that grew up with the privilege of happy memories playing in a backyard. I want to help families have the choice to purchase a home so the next generation of children know what that's like. Speaker, in this place, I will work productively on policies that help people, and we can do that by looking at the tax systems in this state. I now turn to payroll tax. At its core, payroll tax is a tax on successful businesses seen by some to be penalising their decision to grow and be successful, which ultimately stalls the creation of more jobs in our state. I've spoken to countless local businesses in my electorate who have expressed the pressures they are facing under the current payroll tax system. I've spoken to local accountants who've told me that there are plenty of businesses that should and could expand but shy away from the decision because of payroll tax obligations, or that some businesses just simply can't afford to be hit with its payroll tax bill. I refer to a Sydney Morning Herald article by James Adonis in 2015, which sums it up. Of all the taxes in this country, surely payroll tax is the most absurd. It sends a very clear and succinct message to employers. Do not hire any additional employees because if you do, you'll pay the price literally, end quote. I hope the government will consider payroll tax reforms to help small business, and I thank the House.